Hi everyone, welcome to another vlog. So as I said yesterday, today's vlog will be a Q&A vlog. I've been getting a lot of questions through email, so I have picked up a few of them and I'll address them in today's vlog. I think every week I'll dedicate one vlog to a Q&A. So any questions you guys have, keep firing in your emails. Okay, let me look at the first question that I have. This is from a student from China, Jin. So Jin says, Sarfraz, I've been preparing for my GMAT for quite some time now, and I'm ready to start taking practice tests. Okay. So how many practice tests do you recommend I take, and which practice test should I take? Okay. So that's a very commonly asked question and a very valid one. If you saw my vlog a few days earlier where I was discussing your overall GMAT prep strategy, I said that the last stage of your preparation, so I said there were 3 stages, and the last stage of your preparation is basically the full length test stage, where all you do is you take a lot of full length practice tests. So how many tests is a good number? I think anything between 10 and 12 tests. So you should ideally target probably a dozen tests, and that would be a good number. Spread these out over 30 or 40 days. So take a full length test, every 3 days maybe. That's a good idea. And make sure you analyze these tests. So coming to the second part of your question, which tests should these be? So as much as possible, we try to stick to the official material. So your GMAT prep tests are going to be the primary source of full length tests. And thankfully now the GMAT gives you 6 of those. There was a time when we only used to have 2 of those. Then they made it 4. Now thankfully they've made it 6, which I think is a very good number. I mean, the more the merrier, but 6 is pretty good. So 2 of them are free, the other 4 you will have to buy. So please buy them. So use these 6, but these 6 will not be enough. Now in some cases I also recommend that you retake these tests, especially if you did not get very good scores in the first attempt. I mean the first practice test attempt. Say you got a 540 and a 560 in your GMAT prep 1 and 2. Then hopefully you would have worked on your skills, and when you retake these tests, say after a month, you would get higher difficulty questions. So in any case you will get a lot of new questions. And these GMAT preps have a huge question pool. So whenever you retake, you will get some repeat questions, but you will get a lot of new questions. So it's a good idea to maybe retake these tests. When you retake, keep in mind, you must discount your score a little because you will get repeat questions. So you can repeat these, but if you want to try some new tests, apart from these 6, there are some tests available in the market. The problem is nobody knows the GMAT algorithm. So everybody does their own thing, and most of the scores are weird, if you ask me. Most of the scores from third-party tests. But let's talk about them in any case, since I never shy from talking about the competition. In fact, when it comes to full-length tests, Aristotle is not even into it. Because honestly, we haven't been able to figure out the algorithm with any degree of certainty. I still have my big-time doubts about the algorithm and how it works. So coming to other third-party tests, I think Manhattan definitely is a good test. Good test in the sense they have a good scoring algorithm. Your score will not be a big function of how many questions you get correct, but how many difficult ones you get correct. That's something I've seen Manhattan incorporate in the test. And generally through experience, I've found the scores on Manhattan GMAT to be the closest to your score on the GMAT prep. Having said that, the problem with the Manhattan test is the quant is way too complicated, complex, even difficult if you will. Most of the questions that you see on the quant section will be nothing like you will get on the exam. Even in English, I find some reasoning questions particularly strange. So the questions themselves on the Manhattan test will not be very representative. If you struggle with math, avoid Manhattan because it will just demoralize you. Otherwise, it's a good test. There's a free test on the website. You can go and take that free one. And then if you like it, you can purchase the other 5. Then you have Kaplan. Kaplan gives you, I think, 7 or 8 tests. I like the questions of Kaplan, most of them. Two problems with Kaplan. One, well, it doesn't adapt. Trust me on that. There's no adaptive thing happening in the test, and you will get weird scores. I mean, I've seen students get 15 questions wrong in math and yet get a 50. That's not happening on the actual GMAT, trust me. So take the Kaplan test, but don't take it, don't take the score very seriously. There was a time when Kaplan used to be a very difficult test, in the sense, if you scored a 600 on Kaplan, you would probably get a 720 on the actual GMAT. This was about 10 years back. And then they changed their algorithm. They used to be criticized big time. Then Kaplan changed their algorithm, and I think now they have overcorrected, because now I see a lot of students getting a 720, 730 on the Kaplan test, and they don't get a similar score on the actual prep. Even when I look at the number of mistakes they've made, they shouldn't be getting a 720, 730. So take the Kaplan test. The questions are decent, not like Manhattan, but don't take the score very seriously. Use it more as an accuracy tool. You also have tests by Princeton Review, Veritas, but same logic, same suggestions for those also. Don't take the score very seriously. They are different tests from the GMAT prep, so it will be a good change. But use them as a measure of accuracy. Don't take the score very seriously. So what you actually want to do is, you want to alternate your GMAT prep with these tests. Maybe take one GMAT prep, one maybe Kaplan, another GMAT prep, a Manhattan maybe. So all these guys, by the way, have one free test on their website. Kaplan does, Veritas does, Manhattan does, Princeton Review also used to. So you can take these, 4 or 5 free tests, the 6 GMAT preps, that's add up to around 11, 12. That's all you're looking at. So you don't have to buy anything beyond the GMAT preps. So Jin, I hope I answered your question. Now let's look at another question. This comes from Andre from France. So the question is a very short and simple question. Is the OG good enough for math? Interesting question. Most students and teachers would say no. I would say it depends. And it depends on the score you're targeting in quant. If you are looking for a 50 or a 51, the OG will not be enough, because the OG does not have enough difficult questions. But the OG is enough to get you up to a 49, I think. So if you're not targeting like a 50 or a 51 in math, the OG is enough. Even if you are targeting a 50 or a 51, make sure you do the OG quant questions, each one of them, especially data sufficiency, because the language of the OG questions is different from what you would find in a typical math book, and you want to get used to that language. A lot of the time the difficulty in math is that you will not understand the question itself. So make sure you do all the OG questions, and if you're looking at a score of a 48, 49 in math, OG will be good enough. Okay, so let's take another question. Akash from India wants to know how to improve reading comprehension. I wish I could give you a quick answer for that, but of the 3 question types tested on the GMAT, sentence correction, reasoning and RC, reading comprehension is the one that takes the longest to improve, because there are no shortcut rules I or anybody else can give you. How you perform on RC is a big function of whether you've been in the habit of reading, and most people are not, especially most Indians. They're not in the habit of reading, and that's a big problem. However, having said that, does it mean that there's no hope for you? Absolutely not. Because see, the GMAT reading comprehension is a little different. One, you only get 3 or 4 questions from each passage, and you don't really have to understand the passage in great depth to answer most of the questions. Unless you're doing very well in the exam, you won't in any case get a very high difficulty passage. So there are a few things to keep in mind in terms of question types, in terms of strategies on how to read the passage, which your tutor can discuss with you, or if you've gone through any good book, the RC Grail for example, you can find those strategies in the RC Grail. But one suggestion that I would make here is you must practice a lot of passages. One reason why most students struggle with RC is because they haven't practiced enough RCs. It is very boring, which is why nobody does it. And the only way to improve it is through practice. Whatever improvement happens will happen if you practice passages, which is why in the RC Grail we've given 60 passages. Because in RC the strategy is only a small part of the equation. A much larger part is your practice. Getting used to the passage type, the question type, the language, and you will get better. Most students who complain about RC not going well for them haven't even taken all the practice questions in the OG. And that's not enough, by the way. You need to do more. So one suggestion I have is make sure you practice a lot of passages. Don't come up with a complaint that RC is very boring. It is supposed to be boring. I mean, if you go through the RC grill, the first tip I have mentioned over there is the passage is not supposed to be entertaining. Accept that and you'll be okay with it. I mean, don't go in expecting to have a great time reading the RC passages. It's like medicine. It's not supposed to taste good. It's supposed to get the job done. So approach RC very mechanically, very objectively, and you will be fine. One more thing I'll say, if you were looking for an answer where I tell you the names of 3 fiction books that you can read and your RC performance will magically improve, there is no such book. You know, students come and ask me, Sarfraz, should we read The Fountainhead? It's a very popular book apparently. Or you know, should we read this other book, some other name they come up with. It's a reading is a good habit. I mean, reading is a very good habit, but don't expect, just by reading 1 or 2 books, your performance will magically improve. That's not happening. If you've been in the habit of reading, you have a natural advantage on RC. But if you haven't been, don't bother reading fiction now. Just focus on practicing as many passages as you can. Okay, so I'll take one more question, I think, which comes from Karen from Spain. So Karen wants to know about good 1-year MBA programs in the US. Well, see, there are some 1-year programs in the US, Karen. The best known of them would be the one at Kellogg. Kellogg has a 1-year program at Northwestern. There are a few more. However, if you ask me, I never recommend anybody to take up a 1-year program, 1-year MBA program in the US. If you're looking at a 1-year program, in fact, you want to look in your region. Spain itself has 2 or 3 good schools. There's IE, there's ESADE, there's IESE. You know, go to the UK, you go to France, there's INSEAD, HEC is there. So I think all the good 1-year programs are actually in your region, in the Europe, UK region, Singapore maybe. US, if you're looking at, I would suggest only look at it as your destination for a 2-year MBA program. Because that is their bread and butter program. Even for example, a Kellogg, which has a 1-year program, you know, it will always be a stepchild if you ask me. For want of a better word, it's a small batch, I think 50-60 people. It's anyway a very restricted entry program, so you can only get entry into that 1-year program if you've got prior experience in marketing or if you want to go back to the industry that you've come from. So it will be anyway difficult getting in, and you will not get the same experience that you would say at the 2-year program at Kellogg. I'm just using Kellogg as an example. So any school which has its main bread and butter program, which is the 2-year program, the 1-year program will always be the stepchild. It makes sense to have one because there are students interested in it. But will you get the same experience? I don't think so. So if you're looking at a 1-year program, stick to Europe, UK. You look at the US only if you want to get into a 2-year program. And in case you want to change your industry or your function, you definitely want to go for a 2-year program because you would need that internship. It will be very difficult to change your function or your industry in a 1-year program. In fact, they may not even take you if they realize that this is your goal. So I hope that answers your question, Karen. I think that should be enough. I think we've anyway gone beyond my normal time limit for a vlog. I'll address more questions in a subsequent vlog. So I shall see you guys tomorrow. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.